on the PDF.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I'm going to make you host again.
Perfect.
We should be good.
Okay. Okay, perfect.
Okay,
So we will wait until everyone in the different channels are ready. We are coordinating via WhatsApp, and then as soon as everyone is ready, we'll start.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Perfect. So we have something like 8 minutes or so. Cordula, your background is amazing, no? Like Kulha is crazily nice.
Thank you. I'm in Seattle, actually.
It's real?
No.
Okay.
No,
yeah.
no. I wish.
But, yeah,
I wish it was.
I am Seattle. It's like what? Okay. Yeah, it's a library in Seattle. Yeah, it's amazing.
No, I'm boringly upstairs in Richardson Memorial Hall.
Okay. So today in our room, we will start with Georgia, right? Then we'll have William, Trotter, Chelsea, Lauren, and Lexi. Perfect. Catherine, welcome. You're there. So let's put on the chat also the concept board, just as another one, in case you don't have it. But I suppose you have it, I'm not sure. We're stretching like super exhausted. Long days. I'm not recording yet. I will tell you when I record. Okay, so 5 minutes. Okay, so George, I'm going to make you host. So I can leave. You cannot leave. You can never leave this morning. And so I can leave to see my other students from here to there. So now, superhost. And so, yeah, Cordula and Ginés, well, Ginés is just right there, but we'll try to keep under half an hour, like 25 minutes, somehow, with the idea of keeping the time quite strict. I think it's plenty of time, but also in each room, there are like 2 or 3 voices maximum. Georgia, yeah, please, sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say I'm keeping time. So I'll give like a 1-minute warning at the end of the student's presentation and then for the crits as well. So
Perfect.
sorry if I cut you off.
Do you want someone to keep time for you since you're timekeeper for the first one?
Yeah, that's really good idea.
Okay, I can do
That
that.
would be, thank you,
Thank
Lauren.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We don't want to. Okay, 27, let me see.
And it's 7 minutes, correct? 7 minutes max. for
Oh
the
yeah,
students.
7 for students and then 18 for feedback.
Okay, great.
But I think it can run over to like a half hour if, you know.
Yeah. So we'll start at, I think at 9:30 we'll start, even if the others are not. Perfect. Yes. Inés, we were just saying that Inés and Cordula, you're both the main voices for comments to the students. And so you will see popping in and out different faculty. So we will always be 3 faculty. So 2, 1 internal, 1 external, which is you, Inés, 1 internal, Cordula, you, and then the faculty of the student. So I'm seeing Georgia and then I'm leaving and then someone else is coming in. Okay, so the local faculty are going to be moving, but you all are the base, and the host of this room is Georgia Clark, and as soon as she do not leave, the room is stable. So that's the plan. Okay, and then every student has 7 minutes to explain the project, and then total you have 18 minutes for the feedback.
Okay, so
Yeah.
we have 10 minutes for the comments.
Yeah, 18 minutes.
I think.
Or almost 20 minutes.
Yeah, okay.
With a little bit of buffer.
Okay. Cordula, you are in Seattle. Long, far away.
Yes, I am. At least in my dreams.
That's good.
Really, you are in Seattle?
No. But it looks pretty real.
It's 2
right?
hours. It's 2 hours early. So it's 7 in the
true.
morning.
That's
7 in the
true.
morning.
And the sky looks pretty bright already.
Yeah.
Strange.
Anyway, nice place for working you have.
Thank you. Yeah, I would agree.
Okay. So we will start then. 9:30. So yeah, Georgia, take us there. Let me record a moment. Sorry. I wait a moment. I have to recover the host again to record. You can give me the host back for a moment, Georgia.
I have no idea. I can attempt.
You click on your name, it says options. You see it? When you put the participants on the side.
Yeah, I'm
and then
looking at
there
it.
is something that says more in blue on the far right.
Yeah, I'm clicking that, but it just says rename or add a picture. It doesn't say.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. I record anyway. Please ask the host to give
Oh,
you
I can make
permission.
you a co-host. Sorry.
No, you need to make me the host, otherwise.
I think I can. Okay, wait. Did I do it?
Yeah, okay, perfect.
Okay.
Yeah. Record to the cloud. Perfect. Now I'm the host, and then I give you back at this minute. Okay, you're the host back. And we are live. Perfect. Good. Georgette, please, whenever you want, you present
Okay.
your project. Thank you.
Okay, so hey everyone, my name is Georgia Clark. I'm a first-year graduate under the guidance of Margarita, and thank you all for listening today. This semester, we have focused on designing collective housing projects that create opportunities for mixed use and also for mixed income residents to be able to live together and create relationships on an urban block. This project, Pocket Park, not only allows for mixed income residents to rent its varying unit options and to thus create connections with one another, but it also has an open outdoor ground level to invite the surrounding community of New Orleans in as well. And then to better understand the efficient use of small spaces and communal living design, we designed a horizontal, sectional, and vertical home in the beginning of the semester. The horizontal home is a 1,200 square foot house for 5 family members that features many courtyards in its design. This vertical home has a small footprint of around 195 square feet with subsequent small floors above, designed for 5 students with each having their own bedroom. And then finally, after these images, there's the sectional home. And it again has a very small footprint with the levels beyond the first floor being raised above the ground. Both the horizontal and the sectional homes are directly informing the new urban block in mostly keeping their designs in narrow forms. And thus, these designs were considered building blocks for the urban block project, whose site is located on the block of French Truck Coffee uptown in New Orleans. And I know this block to be a pretty energetic and social one, so I decided to enhance that theme with Pocket Park. It features 70 units of varying sizes and has a ground level market and outdoor space that are open to the public to maintain that social quality of the block that already exists. And this is a figure ground diagram showing the existing and then proposed buildings, keeping that urban scale. This is a ground level plan that shows some of its programs as well as the sidewalk and outdoor space proportions. And there's also a typical level plan. This is level 3 of the design, which shows how the units become more dense as the levels rise. And it shows the unit layouts as well. And where the axes of these units meet or share walls, there are these outdoor communal balcony spaces that serve as a gathering or meeting point between these units to create social opportunity for its residents. This perspective shows the corner of French Truck Coffee, and located to the left of French Truck, highlighted in orange, are private office spaces for rent out of Pocket Park, conveniently located next to that coffee shop. This view shows the corner, the other corner of the lot, where there's a farmer's market, a bakery, art studio, and all of these are easily accessible from the street. And additionally, the residential balconies mentioned earlier, in this case, look out onto the street. And this view features a better look at the outdoor space, which features a lot of cutouts in the ground that help to create a sort of division of space among the land. So passerbys can either choose to walk down into a green space or to walk around it, which sort of delineates these spaces as more private without being totally concrete. And there are also large rooftop spaces that allow for opportunity for either a green space or a rooftop pool. And those are strictly for the residents as well. There are also cutouts in the balconies that filter light down to lower sections, lower balcony sections that can provide more opportunity for vegetation to be integrated within the structure and filter light. This section denotes the different types of units that you can see available. And in this one as well, you can start to see the dips in the ground as well as those colored units again. And as for the diagrams that help me think about the space more clearly, this is a diagram of shared walls, which help me identify which public or private spaces within the structure to place where, as well as aperture opportunities. And this is a vegetation diagram with proposed and then existing vegetation. The new vegetation essentially lines alleyways that give access to the stairs for the units. And then lastly, a point of access diagram that more clearly shows where those alleyways are and the points of entrance where the residents can reach their stairs and units. So essentially, There's an alleyway for every stair, and the only place where these points of access cannot be reached from the edges of the lot are, of course, in the middle of the block. And so a stair option with corridors was created as a solution to having an entrance for each unit easily accessible from the street. And then lastly, just to run through the units available, there are 11 of these small studio units, 11 of these 4-bedroom towers, 21 bedroom more spacious units, 16 2-bedroom units around 1,000 square feet, and then lastly, 12 3-bedroom units. So that's it. Thank you for listening. I guess I'll go to the concept board. I'll reshare.
So, Cordula.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have the concept board open, but I might not be in command of the. I don't know. It seems like I can't zoom. But anyway, okay. It's always difficult in the beginning, but thank you for a very clear presentation. I think there's a few questions I have to start things off. One would be how your the initial semester research has influenced the decision making for the final proposal. Is there some kind of a sequence, right, or kind of progression that you followed that informed the final configuration? And then tied to that question would be, what informed the decision making within the site? I don't think you spoke about that yet in terms of what is located where. Some of the block components are set back from the street to open up, I guess, shared or accessible public space, between sidewalk and actually building realm. So two questions. One, how would you describe your progress and kind of the ideas that emerged from that progress leading up to the final design? And then second, what informed the final design within the urban context?
Yeah, I would say from the first half of the semester, the horizontal and the vertical homes definitely directly informed the form of my overall block. I didn't necessarily keep the exact same plans, of course, because you can't have all of those like porous courtyards and everything. But I did keep that idea of having an outdoor space for a lot of the units and being able to have these social communal balcony spaces and keeping that idea of porosity, I guess, throughout the whole thing. And then I definitely kept the overall structure of the horizontal and the vertical homes as well. And I pieced those together essentially along the block, trying to just keep the scale sort of thin and similar to the buildings that were existing and being kept on the block as well. And it just ended up turning into this orthogonal nature.
Okay, how about the second part to the question?
Can you repeat it?
So to me, it might be worthwhile, thinking about how that could be documented, this kind of progression and, again, kind of identifying the ideas that you develop in the process of designing and how they manifest themselves in the final design. I think that would be useful. Mm-hmm. And then, but secondly, what informs the actual decision making on the site, right? So for example, you have, that there is a specific type of unit distribution throughout the block, right? Or ideas behind that, right? There is certainly, there's setbacks and open space that's identified, probably in reaction to some of the, surrounding urban morphology, right? And also in relation to the internal program logic. So could you talk about that a little bit more? Where are things placed and why?
Yeah, I will say that I did want the block to be accessible from all 4 sides. So there's essentially like a point of circulation or a wide point of entrance from every side that the public can, walk under a walkway.
Can you go to a plan, maybe a side plan?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was about to say that maybe it's a plan, the best thing.
Mhm.
Yeah, so you can see, can you guys see
I
my
think-
mouse?
Yes,
Okay, cool.
I think ground
Um,
floor and typical floor, these two things.
Okay.
Oh,
So
one after the other. I don't know. It's really small.
I know. Okay. So as you can see, I sort of did from this side, like there's this steady circulation here, and then also from the other side as well for people to walk through. So I definitely was keeping that in mind whenever I was making the design. And then I also wanted to think about like, this is the most public space, this sort of bottom right corner. So I set the buildings back a bit further than they are in the other spaces so that there would be more room to trapeze around, because this top half is office rental space next to the coffee shop. And then this half over here is just like an open green space. So yeah, I would say thinking about which spaces are going to be inhabited more throughout the day is why I would either set the buildings back, or if they weren't, they were going to be put closer towards the street.
Mm.
And then
Mm.
I can move to a typical as well.
Have you mentioned orientation?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about that as well. So for all of these, I guess, vertical pieces, they're essentially repeating of the same types of units. And then for the other orientation, these units are longer, the bigger units, and they repeat in a pattern as well. And again, where those spaces meet, there are those little balcony spaces as well for the residents to socialize and inhabit. So there's sort of that repeating nature of the vertical and then the horizontal lines. And then of course, with this lengthy horizontal right here, this is where the stair and those corridors were placed so that everybody could have entrances from street access pretty easily.
Well, thank you, Cordula, for beginning. I think it's not easy to say something just in the first. So I think it's a really good project. So I'm really surprising for the quality of the drawings, for the precision of the drawings, or how you draw the different pieces of the house. That is not easy. So looks very. So usually we thought that it's easy to draw just a simple house, but I think it's not. It's really difficult, and I think you have a very good project. So, but I would like to talk about two different things. First, for me. So I think it's very smart to use the building as a way of splitting the whole plot in different pockets. So I think it's really smart. So and I think the position of these blocks are more or less quite well done. But I'm missing two things. First, I think for me, it's surprising that you use the same morphology of having two houses per elevator and staircase, just a vertical core, using the three different typologies of houses. So I think it could be better if you use different morphology. For instance, having a gallery or having a more a deeper block or something like that when you are using different typologies. So for me, the morphology, so the way in which you go into the house and the way in which the block is constructed is very close related to the typology you choose. So you have different typologies, but the same morphology. So I think the morphology is like an automatic decision that perhaps is not the best. Second thing, if you have different morphologies, perhaps you are losing the opportunity of walk along these blocks in a public spaces that could connect all these terraces. So imagine that you are just 2 years old. Excuse me, what?
No, I was just saying that you can show Georgia, meanwhile, the plan where you have this corridor, I don't know, that upper floor, but I don't want to interrupt you.
In the upper floor.
The typical floor, I mean, here you have this corridor, no? That
Yeah,
Yeah.
but where is the, in the plan, where is the corridor?
This is a good question.
Yeah, because I didn't see.
Yeah, it would be lining.
So I think it's yeah, I understand. But it's not only about the corridor, it's about a new network of connection that could be upstairs, going up or going down, that could connect all the terraces, just making like a mesh of different possibilities of walking, of running, of biking for small kids or whatever you want. So if you are using this layout for the blocks, you can use also not only for the solid, also for the public space that could be in up, down, and so on. This is the first thing that I would like to say. Second, this relation between morphology and typology. So if you want to produce a richer building or richer or more different opportunities for the people who are going to live there, you can also produce different ways of going into the house with different solutions, because you are talking about different sizes of houses and different morphologies or typologies, because you have tower houses or horizontal houses and so on. This is the first thing. The second thing that I think is well done, but I think it could be improved, is if you have these pocket parks or pocket spaces. I think Cordula said something about that. Why you decided that this pocket park or these pocket spaces are in the places in which there are first, and how is the relation between these different pockets? So because you can multiply the sense of being in a big place, because you haven't, if you are visiting this place, you don't know what's happening the other side of, you don't know, you cannot control the space in one view. So how is the transition between one space and the other? I think is extremely important. So how is the threshold, no, between these spaces? So the links that you can provoke or produce in these spaces that are covered but this outside and so on. So usually these spaces is where kids wants to be. This space is a space in which you are in some way hidden. You are looking at what's happening in one patio, but looking at the other also. So I think is select the right place for these pocket places is very important. Having that, knowing that something could happen in the other side of the street. So because something, so you are establishing a relation with the other side of the street. And second thing, how to transit, how to go from one pocket park or one pocket space, open space place to the other, I think is extremely important. And sometimes in your layout, you can find places that in which you don't know exactly where you are. If you are in the border or in the side of the former of the house that you have to maintain, or it's like a pathway that goes east-west. So it's sometimes some places I think I can draw, because probably I'm not good.
Yeah,
a better drawer than a speaker. So these places are not clearly identified. You don't know where you are, so you are a little bit lost. So this is very clear. This is very clear. This is very clear. And then what's happened here? What's happened here? What's happened here? So sometimes these spaces are a little bit like leftovers, in which nothing could happen. So so this is not like so you are not totally, you're not controlling completely the space, the open space. So I think for me, these two things are the most important thing. How to establish a relation between typology and morphology, how to produce something richer if you are using different morphologies because you are using different typologies, and having a very clear idea about why these places are in which place, in this place, and how is the relations between them, and what's happening in the third holes, no?
Yeah,
Here,
thresholds, yeah.
yeah, here, these pathways, tunnels, or something like that. And the other thing, why not you have a total connection of like a network of upstairs
Yeah.
world in some way.
Yeah. It's spaghetti.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I would, like, add to the comments, like going back to these, exterior, the ground spaces, right? The definition, right? There's different ways to kind
You
of
can move to the ground. Move to the ground.
Yeah, anticipate or design them, right? One is, as kind of a dialogue with the surrounding context, right? That can be studied, in terms of, scale, program, right? Activities, right? Dynamics, right? And then locate and also proportion these spaces in relationship to that. You have, right, a five-story building, right?
Mm-hmm.
And with, not much disrupting the verticality of the facades, right? Other than, the occasional, like carvings or voids, right? But there's nothing protruding, right? So I think either through circulation, right, or through protrusions, dialogue can be established with those exterior spaces, that's one thing. But at the same time, I think you can be more conscious about locating and also proportioning them. And that proportioning certainly would come from maybe studying the section a little bit more effectively, right? And thinking about opportunities of the building, shaping, right, and responding to the activity in these spaces, right? Because otherwise you're facing, right, a pretty, kind of stark, vertical facade, right, in relationship to that ground floor exterior space. And then the second thing again is the proportioning of these spaces, right? What are the activities that are anticipated at that ground level, right? What is the associated landscaping, surfacing, vegetation strategy, right? That doesn't necessarily come from the program, right? You mentioned a bakery, right? You're not in command of that, right? It's leasable space, and who knows what happens there, right? And that might change, right? But you're in command of, designating, right, surface conditions, right, and designating vegetation strategies, for example, and also the proportions of these spaces that then would allow for the imagining, right, or the intuitive interpretation of the use of these spaces. So I think since this is pretty porous, right, at the ground level, I think there's a lot of opportunity there to really carefully orchestrate and kind of anticipate some of these activities, right, and the way the spaces can be used. So that is specifically apparent. Right, for example, right here, right, or right here, right, there are setbacks, right, but it's really not clear, right, what these setbacks enable, right, and what they're kind of anticipate in terms of, are people supposed to be drawn in as they're walking by? Is this residential use? But it's not really kind of defined in that regard. So just be aware of that, as an opportunity, right, rather than as rendering it as almost leftover space, right, or non-designated space.
That's time.
Oops, right on time.
Yeah, good, very good.
Okay, but yeah, I agree. It's a clearly drawn and thought through proposal. So
Awesome.
the section always offers a lot of opportunity, and sometimes we don't pay enough attention to the to the section, right, as something that can really become an integral part in the decision-making process, right? And then in your case, it has to do with circulation. It has to do with studying the height relationship of spaces sectionally, right? Not everything has to have the same, you know, proportion, right? You know, things can intersect with one another. And then really, and then also, again, the facade of the building, right, offers opportunity to be, you know, interrupted, right, and activated.
Awesome.
Great.
Well, that was actually really great feedback and gave me a lot to think about. Yeah, gave me a lot of room for improvement, and I really appreciate it. So thank you.
Good. Congrats.
Great.
All right, should I go ahead and share my screen?
Yes.
Oh, it says it says it's disabled.
Oh. I think it has to be enabled by the host. Who is the host now?
Oh no. Okay.
Did the host leave? Oh no,
Okay.
Georgia, you're the host.
Got this.
William Trotter. Okay.
If you go on share screen.
Multiple participants. Okay.
Advanced sharing, I think, something.
I
Yeah.
attempted
Okay, good.
something.
All right,
Okay.
great.
Thank you, Cortana.
See this? Can everyone see this? Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Great, awesome. All right. Morning, everyone. I hope you're doing well. My name is William Trotter, and today I'll be presenting my proposal for an intentional community development in the Garden District of New Orleans. This project is entitled Grow NOLA. Grow NOLA is a sustainable gardening community focused on educating the children and greater population of New Orleans about the benefits of urban farming. The project takes inspiration from the lineage of design of the single-family homes we designed in the first half of the semester. First, the cross-axial circulation of the horizontal home is echoed in the layout of each unit, where the centrally located communal spaces are enclosed by private spaces in each corner. Next, the vertical home introduces the idea of modularity and how different spatial relationships can be derived from the same enclosing geometry. Lastly, the sectional home shifts focus to diagonal views and the relationship of different floors to one another. So moving into the project with these concepts in mind helped clarify the architectural objectives of the proposal. Now, taking a look at the site, this view of the Garden District helps us understand the scale of the project relative to the urban grain of New Orleans. And pulling into the 9-square block, we can see our site's relationship with the surrounding context. And with a focus on education, the block can act as a connection point between the school and the rest of the community. And to go about establishing this connection, we can utilize the indentation in the block provided by its only vacant lot, chip it away, and draw a full length through the block to where the school and the rest of the neighborhood now have a tangible connection. And then closing in on the block itself, we can see arguably the most direct constraint of the project, the 3 properties that are not participating in the development. From there, we can start to see how the proposed form relates to and pays respect to these pre-existing conditions. The decision to create an agriculturally focused community was not reached without influence. The Garden District, in Greater New Orleans for that matter, is considered a food desert, where the average proportion of grocery stores to consumers falls at about 1 to 8,500 nationally. That denominator nearly doubles within the city, with each New Orleans grocery serving roughly 14,000 citizens. This community seeks to disengage from this struggle by creating a self-sufficient gardening system in which community members help cultivate products for themselves and New Orleans as well. Children from across the city, and especially the adjacent school, are invited to learn urban gardening methods in hopes that they will continue utilizing these strategies as urban densification accelerates. Moving into the formal development of the project, we can start to see the strategy used to achieve the resulting mass. The first step, as already hinted toward, is the connection of the school and neighborhood through the use of a pedestrian walkway. From here, the block is sliced horizontally to create 4 distinguishable areas. Next, the proposed mass snakes through these established areas without disturbing the existing properties. The remaining open areas are then divided into programmable community spaces with unique connections to the pedestrian walkway. And lastly, the housing massing is lifted off the ground, revealing anchor points of community space with fluidity of circulation between them. And looking back at these steps side by side, a clear geometric lineage is established. The objectives of this community are encapsulated by 3 words: educate, cultivate, and share. These themes lend themselves well in the distribution of program on the ground floor. The Urban Gardening Education Center and After School Care rest on the south corners of the lot, establishing further connections to the school. Gardening can be found in the greenhouse and hydroponics house to the east, as well as in the central community gardening space protected by the hooked form of the housing massing. Community-focused programs such as the produce store, bike rental shop, and amphitheater rest on the north side of the lot to be in communion with the pre-existing cafe and restaurant. In addition to the ground floor's porosity of access, it was equally important to pair this with porosity of program. So while each area falls under a specific objective, one may encounter several themes from other spaces across the community in the same place. Here we can see the strategy for the residential core system, as well as unit access, interior and exterior relationships, and private, semi-private, and public spaces. It is also here that the massing strategy begins to reveal itself, where the shifting and sliding of modularly sized units results in the creation of special terrace and porch conditions. Taking a quick look at the vegetation of the site, it was important to preserve as many trees as feasibly possible. For this project, the central grove is partially removed, while the vegetation on the perimeter and existing lots is preserved. That grove has been replanted in the meditation garden to the northwest. Green space and gardening planters are subsequently established. Moving on to the technical drawings, we can see in more detail how these strategies play out. This ground floor plan shows how the community spaces truly become islands in the otherwise fluid plane of circulation. The covered spaces between these islands serve as protected community resting and dining areas. This allows the experience of the central gardening space to feel more private and secluded relative to the more public plaza and greensward to the north. Rising up to the residential floors, we can start to see the benefits of the aforementioned push-pull strategy. The recessed units are connected to the horizontal core via bridging porches. The resulting voids are then protected by a floor-to-ceiling lattice, allowing light to pass through while preserving a layer of visual privacy from the main circulation. And continuing up, we can start to see how the roof planes of previous units become the porch or terrace conditions of those on the current floor. The pagodas along the perimeter, which are now in projection, provide shade to community spaces and match the language of the building's main encasing system. On floors 4 and 5 as well, the porches of previous floors become visible in projection through the voids along the circulation path. And here we can see a quick detail of the fifth floor's midsection to gain a better understanding of what lies beyond the plane of occupation, as well as the porches and terraces, as well as how the porches and terraces interact across floors. Moving into section, the aforementioned diagonal views inspired by the sectional home become much more legible. The offset modularity allows different sized porch and void conditions, some of which lead to double height spaces. This section shows the community garden space contained within the snaking form of apartments, as well as one of the moments where the building is perforated to create community space among the residential floors. These sections, again, help clarify the push-pull massing strategy and emphasize the uniqueness of the resulting spaces.
About a minute left.
Thank you. Pulling away from the nitty-gritty, we can take a look at the views created by this proposal. This view along the pedestrian walkway presents the main building's facade, as well as a glimpse into the protected community garden through the covered rest spaces. This view from the second floor balcony shows the intimacy of the community garden, how it acts as a place of growth, as well as a place of rest and comfort. The stormwater retention pond also takes center stage as it cools the space and reflects the verticality of the building's floating colonnade. Then we have this more intimate view of the interactive porch spaces found throughout the building. The layers of privacy are clearly visible when looking from left to right, as the spaces progressively become less public and more private. The unique lighting conditions shaped by the voids also play a key role in enriching the space. And then we'll take a quick look at how the units function. All units are based off of a module system of 28 by 28 foot squares, which shift within a grid with a cell size of 7 feet, which is also the width of the voids, terraces, and main circulation. The extra half module added for the mid-size units influences the horizontal offsets found across each floor, and this heightens the opportunity for uniquely situated conditions. And the large unit occupying 2 models stays truest to the circulation of the aforementioned horizontal house. And here we can see how all of those units weave together about 3 main cores. And to see these connections play out in more detail, this animated axon shows a 4x4 assembly, revealing how the modular shifting creates unique living spaces for each apartment, and how all of this becomes secured by a floating colonnade. And that's all. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. So could we see the ground level?
Yep.
Well, I would like to say first that, in my opinion, it's difficult to read here what is the main goal of your project. So you was talking about the food desert, about the gardening, about the orchard, but you add many other things in the ground level and also in other levels. And I think it's something that happens to students frequently. So there are too much intentions, too many things. So I think it's not easy to read it here. What is the core of the project? The core, I think, is this orchard that you have in this area in the south, and probably all the things that you add, all the programs on all the spaces that in which you are working, has to be a strong relation with this orchard or garden that you have in the core. So I think it's also and happens also that many things that you can see in this drawing are small, without the scale of the whole thing, without the scale of the public space. So a very series or sequences of very small things and spaces and objects that I think produce a weak and confused public open space. So I think probably if you have more week, another week, you have to reduce the number of objects and trying to introduce something stronger. This is what I see here. So of course, if we see the just another level, so the second level, for instance, I think this gallery is very interesting with these spaces in which you can be just talking with your friend or something like that. I think this render that you show us is very, I think it's very expressive. So I think it's very good idea, but also like in the previous student, I think this idea of the gallery and the spaces in the upper places, on the upper levels, are not, I think, explore as much as possible. So I think most of the places that are in between the holes has the same size. So I think it's possible to produce like in a house, more living rooms outside, or small living rooms outside, or something like that. So for me, this space is too much regular. Yeah, just for walking or for moving on. Only these spaces that you can see here, here, and here are related to the sense of stay, of being stopped, for relation. So I think the idea is very strong, but probably you will have to go another step ahead for producing more spaces with different sizes for different situations. So here you have another that is bigger, but I think this is something that you have to explore.
Well, I think in relation to that, I think it's worthwhile acknowledging, what these spaces, the linear space, right, that snakes around is designed for. It's really mainly circulation, right? So it's not a space in terms of its proportioning where you right, invited to linger, right? And then the spaces in front of the apartments those are private, almost private spaces, because they're right adjacent to somebody's entrance door, right? So they're also not kind of shared spaces in that sense, because of their location, right? They're kind of cut off. Maybe 2 units share it, but it's not kind of a public space or a shared space that allows for multiple tenants to get together, right? And also, again, engage with the spaces that, and the actions and dynamics that take place below them, right? Well, first of all, I thought it was a very clear presentation. Like, I really wanted to congratulate you on the diagramming that you went through in the beginning. That was very clear and really allowed us to understand the logic of, your design process and your thoughts along the way. So I thought that was really great. But I agree, like, I think there's opportunity to expand, if that's an area of focus, to expand on these upper level shared spaces and how they become actually usable, right? And not just circulation space. I think the overall, form of the building, in plan, right, probably could be, right? I mean, right, you can, right, that can be expanded on, right? I mean, you can, right? You can do all sorts of stuff with that, right? If you wanted to, right? And through that, frame maybe the spaces, right, at the ground level a little bit more specifically. I think it's about establishing a hierarchy, right, or a dialogue between, in your case, it's really between, the building, which has a very strong presence. If you look at your renders and, like elevations and 3D visualization, right, and then, right, the ground level activities, right, which kind of take on their own logic, right? But they are, I agree that at the ground level depiction, right, on the ground floor plan, they kind of start to fuse together and don't become necessarily distinguishable anymore, right? So the question is, are they supposed to be read as two entities, right, that have, again, kind of a relationship and a dialogue with one another, right, where the building kind of, like responds, right, or establishes that relationship, or are the two much more fused with one another, right, which probably would lead to the building breaking down further on the upper levels and take on a similar, maybe more porous agenda, right? Right now, it's like, to me, there's a little bit of a conflict there, because I agree that the building form, is really dissolved at the ground level and starts to merge with the components, specifically the, right, not sure what's going on here, right, and what the logic is of these elements in relationship to the building, right? They could be folded into the building logic, right, and then again, that it would become clearer that there is, again, this kind of relationship between, kind of shared publicly accessible space activity and then the building realm.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. So and it's true. The way your presentation was very good, very clear, and I like to hear about geometry. So how to divide, how to split, no? So I'm remembering a film by the Coen brothers, and I think it's the killer who was he cut a cow with a very small knife. So and the film was related to how to cut in hundreds of pieces a cow with a small knife, because you need to know the structure, the skeleton, where the muscles are, how to split and understand what you are doing if you are cutting a cow with a small knife. And this is a way of thinking. So how to split in different sections, in different atmosphere, in different geometries, a big plot in which you are working. So I think this way of thinking, I think, is extremely useful. After that, at the end of the drawing, at the end of the project, you can break the rules that you establish, of course, because you have the freedom to do that. But understand clearly what do you want to do in each places, I think is very clear. And this way of thinking and expression is clear. I agree with Cordula about some confusion that you have in the ground level and these galleries that are a little bit poor. Probably it's also related to the position of the vertical circulations. So I think the vertical circulation, you have these three cores, I think, but probably you have a cul-de-sacs in different places that are not very well. It's not a good idea. So probably you have this gallery, you need more staircases at the end of the galleries, or so thinking in the idea of something that is like a loop. You can go up from one corner and go down in the other corner or something like that. So if you see the plan, I think the position and the shape of the vertical cores are, I think, wrong, and probably this provoke a loss of possibilities in the gallery. So because the corner is not a good idea, I think you need probably another staircase here, and another here or here. So I don't know. So how to do? So it's understanding that the way for going up and going down is related to the use of these galleries. And I would like to say also another thing about the vertical house that you show us, that I think is the same. It's something that I thought in the previous document, also in the previous students. For me, it's a little bit surprising that what is a vertical house? So it's about the staircase. It's about to going up and going down. It's not. So the staircase is something extremely important, I think. And here you can see the staircase, and I think this is an elevator or something like that. It's like a leftover. So if you have a vertical house, the way of going up or going down is something absolutely essential to the house or to the project. And here is just like putting one floor over the other without taking in account that you are producing something vertical. For instance, in that case, perhaps the elevator is extremely important, and this is something that you can draw. I don't know, here this is elevator and this is the staircase, because you can see that you are in a place that you have to go out, or perhaps the elevator is in the middle and it's something that cross all the floors. I don't know. So I think it's so you have to go deeper with the words. So if you are talking about vertical, the atmosphere and the space and the mechanism that you have for going up and going down is extremely important. And here it's not so important. I think the same happens in the other project, in the previous project. So the tower is not putting one floor over the other, it's something more.
Yeah, well said. Well, it's, I think, sometimes, it's certainly with projects of this scale that none of you have dealt with before. And again, it's admirable how far everybody has come in the past 2 years. If you think about it, like, this is fantastic, right?
Yeah, of course.
But sometimes there is it's challenging not to be bogged down by planning, right, and kind of the proper unit distribution, right, in favor of neglecting, right, or kind of putting the architectural concept second, right. So here the critique could be like, okay, there's the snake, which was the band which was established, and then everything else like circulation, etc., was kind of fit in or added to the site, right. Whereas it could become a design element, right, that's really thought through in relationship to the units, right, in relationship to access points, right, in relationship how it operates, or maybe can take on an additional agenda than just serving mere circulation, right. So the actual architectural consideration, in addition to just unit distribution, right, is something, right, that one should always maybe sometimes put to the forefront, depending on how you approach the design, right? Or maybe put the logic of distribution to the side and then revisit the project from a different point of view, which is, the architectural point of view, right? What do I create here, right? What is the overall intent for the architecture, right? And the logic, and what are the key principles, right? That I'm incorporating.
William, have you something to say?
Yes, sir.
Come on.
Oh, I'm sorry. Were you asking me to respond, or did you say?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Oh yes, no. I absolutely agree with your critique.
No. This is not that you have to defend your project.
I would say
your arguments.
I would say that my quote unquote defense would be that yeah, the idea is that the form protects the snaking form protects the central. You're correct in saying that this garden is the central focus, central element of the community, and basically all of the ground floor program is sort of just an extension of these elements. You're right in that maybe I am kind of crowding the program by adding an amphitheater. I would probably revise, or in a future revision, remove that. But the produce store, like smoothie shops, are all from local, or all from like grown produce on the site. And then this is the Urban Gardening Education Center, which aligns directly with the intention of the community to educate the children of New Orleans and the school directly to the south on urban farming strategies. So there's the actual education center, and then there's a hydroponics house, a greenhouse, planters, and a splash park. So that was like the reasoning or the thinking there.
Right.
And using that property to kind of separate it from the more intimate space.
Right. So once you establish that, those are all, great intentions, and, all of you have really great intentions these days. But there's a difference, right, between the design strategy, right, or the intentions for the design, and then the narrative, right? Sometimes, there's a tendency to become, slave to the narrative where, the smoothie, right, the organically produced smoothie, right, moves in front of, again, like the decisions that are important to the design strategy, right, which have to do with how are these spaces framed, how are they kind of choreographed, how compositioned and balanced against one another, right, as an architectural design strategy in relationship to the building, right? So I would argue that, we talk about this all the time, also in thesis, like the narrative, it's admirable, right? But you have to be careful that it doesn't overrule, right, or kind of, shade the decisions that like are important for the actual architecture on the site, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's time.
Great. I always end right on time.
Yeah.
Thank you both. I appreciate it.
Good. Congrats.
Yes.
Hello. I think I'm next.
Hi.
Hi. So hello, good morning. My name is Chelsea Kilgore, and this is the collective housing project, Tetris. This project is designed for a multi-generational community and aims to create spaces that encourage community interaction, create different scales of public and private spaces, and allow for flexibility and future growth. Ideas utilized in the collective housing project stem from homes designed in the first part of the semester. The horizontal home, was designed for a family and focused on growth and flexibility of program and space. The vertical home was designed for a group of 5 students and utilized separate modules on a 4-square grid. And lastly, the sectional home, which was designed for a family and was about utilizing the spaces in between staggered floors and creating views that connected members of the family within the home. These projects were the starting point when entering into the aggregation design. The collective housing takes small bits from each of these projects, the idea of flexibility from the horizontal home, the modular arrangement from the vertical home, and creating spaces that are connected by views, which stems from the sectional home. This precedent, the Gifu apartment building, was also a major influence in the project. The thinness of the building that allowed for ventilation and porosity, and the puzzle-like units that created a connected community were like a game to be explored. A similar strategy was then used in this aggregation project to manifest a community that is physically and socially linked. The inception of the project was also rooted in research that was found on co-living. The shown data is composed by the Research and Design Lab Space 10 and was based on surveys of over 14,000 people on co-living preferences. This research was inspired the shared spaces that are within the complex and helped keep in mind the boundaries between private space and spaces that people are willing to share with one another. So with the desire to create multi-generational spaces, the project began with creating units to accommodate different types of living. There are 5 typologies that each have different amenities that accommodate 3 different demographics: the young professional, the family, and the elderly. The 5 typologies are designed to fit the needs of these groups based on their different programmatic needs. I couldn't figure out how to embed the animation, so I apologize, but here's the animation of kind of the rules and organization of the project. So in terms of placement, the project adheres to a set of rules that define how the modules are pieced together. Each unit is placed so that it has access to 2 shared spaces, shown in light green and light yellow, that connect a different unit to 2 of its surrounding neighbors. Combining private living space with shared spaces enables residents to be a part of a vibrant social community. Oops, sorry. So these 5 typologies span across 61 units on the whole block. This drawing shows the plans of each unit that range from the smallest at 312 to the largest at 780 square feet of private space. Each unit has access to the outside on 2 sides. The variety of sizes make the community more accessible to those of different incomes. With these units, there is also room for growth as residents are able to simply switch their living situation and unit based on their needs. The sizes allow for flexible options for growing families or adults looking to downsize. Each unit is designed so that there is a diverse range of options within the community. Different units leave out certain spaces, such as kitchens or offices within the private unit. Units designed for young professionals and elderly adults leave out private kitchens, and large family units don't include work or playrooms. The loss of private space is made up for in the shared spaces between neighbors, encouraging engagement and relationship with one another. These are some of the options for what the shared spaces could be. So one of the shared spaces is always an outdoor terrace that acts as an entryway. The second of the shared spaces is chosen by the residents to accommodate different needs. The unit's shared spaces are not necessarily linked based on similar demographics of residents and are designed to connect residents across generations. These 5 typologies and their shade spaces collate into a housing complex that thinly wraps around the perimeter of the block. This set of diagrams shows how the final building form and therefore plans came to be. Inherently, it's shaped by the constraints of the project, which are the remaining 3 buildings on the site: a coffee house, a restaurant, and a private residence, represented here in pink. But it is also shaped by the desire to have layers of outdoor spaces. The project also takes inspiration from Sue Fujimoto's House N, a project comprised of 3 shells that explores the private home's relationship to nature and the public street. The walls create different rings of public and private space. Taking this concept and scaling it up to the urban block was within the scope of the course's intentions to take small scale elements from homes and explore them on the larger scale of the urban block. So the outdoor spaces seek to manifest engagement between the direct unit neighbors, the residents of the complex, and the residents within the surrounding neighborhood. The 3 rings of housing create 3 layers of outdoor space: an outward public space, an intermediate private space or semi-private space, and an internal private space meant only for residents. On the weekends, as shown in the diagram on the right, block opens to the public and becomes more of a gathering space for the community for markets or special occasions. So here is the ground floor plan. The plans of the block show the transition from the public to the private as one moves inward. The ground floor houses public space that is shared with the overarching neighborhood on the outer perimeter and shared spaces for resident use on the inside ring. This plan of the second floor shows the thin rings of housing with the exterior balcony circulation. Residents arrive to their units from one of the 7 vertical stair cores that flank the entrances to the block, making them easy to access and find. The different rings of outdoor space also shift from the structured to the organic environment as one progresses towards the center. This is defined by the increase of vegetation and the curved pedestrian paths. The sections of the housing block also illustrate this change from the man-made to the organic and show the progression from the street to the dense vegetation-filled central courtyard. The first section is cut along the north to south axis. The second section is cut along the east to west axis. And the third section is also cut north to south and slices through a combination of upper level units and bottom level public space.
About a minute remaining.
Thank you. So this first perspective shows the intermediate space that is on the weekends shared with the outside community. And this drawing represents the private courtyard meant for residents. And this perspective illustrates one of the shared terraces. These diagrams show how the units are Tetris together and illustrate the facades of the block from all 4 streets, as well as the porosity created in the facade by the terraces. The thinness of the block also allows for optimal cross ventilation, and the terraces appear as punctured holes in the facade. The block is also designed to allow for engagement with the outside, as previously stated. During the week, the block maintains its rings of privacy and grows over the weekend. The community opening its doors to the public very clearly shows the connection to the surrounding neighborhood, but those connections also happen through the public spaces on the ground floor, such as the community gym and commercial stores, and the previously discussed porosity that allows views into the block from the street. The modularity of the project also allows for flexibility and the opportunity for future growth and expansion. This happens as previously discussed in the smaller scale of the units, where residents could change their living situation based on changing needs, but is also able to happen in the large scale of the block. If in the future the remaining buildings, the coffee shop, restaurant, and home decided to be part of the new community, it would be simple to integrate into the project. And that is all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Why could we see the previous slide?
Yes, this one.
Why you hate these people who don't want to share the development? So do you have to think about in these people, probably they don't feel very good with this plan. This plan has to be completely secret, because it's not. So I think it's very smart, but I think it's part of the problem, because you have something in mind that is complete, perfect. So do you want to produce something? Yes, this square and with the inner square that is extremely powerful, fantastic, but this is not the place in which you are working. Because so you have these 3 people, these 3 persons that don't want to share the development, no? And I think because probably, I don't know, because you are thinking these things happens. There, I think, is not very delicate with these people. So how to deal? So I think this is a problem that always we have. So we have always how to produce something that at the same time has to be specific, and at the same time wants to be generic. So you was thinking in something completely generic, and for that you draw these 2 squares, but at the same time you have to solve the specific project that you have. And I think at the same happens in section. So I think you have here 5 stories or 7, or I don't know. So how to establish the relations with the existing? I think is you because you was thinking in the generic, perhaps you forget it a little bit. So so I think the project is really smart and very interesting. So, but you have to think about this this paradoxic or paradoxic, no? Relation between generic and specific. This is one thing. And the other thing, what is the size of the square, the small square? What is the size of this? Of the module?
It's 12 feet.
12. So
the inside space
so
is 12 feet by 12 feet.
So 4 by 4 meters. So
Yes.
okay, good idea, very extremely radical, but you have to take in account that the deepness of this block is extremely small. So it's very difficult to find a construction in which you have a wall and another wall, and the distance between both walls are only 4 meters. So it's very inefficient in terms of the money, because you have a lot of facade. It's very inefficient in terms of thermodynamic, because you are losing energy. Anyway, it could be a good idea. It could be a good idea, but you have to go deeper in that. So I think the example that you saw us from Sejima, that is extremely, the deepness is extremely small. Also, the distance between the walls. I think your work is more tinier. It's more tiny. I think it's so. And then you have to take in account this like a something that you have in your table and something that you have to explore. Could you show us the plan?
Yes.
Yeah, please.
Would you like the unit
yeah,
plans
one
or the
plan.
ground floor plan?
Yeah, one plan. It could be bigger. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So the question is, what do you have in this house that take in account this extremely radically morphology of the block, because it's so small? This is something that you have to take in account. And if you see these plants are a little bit conventional, it's like something that you reduce in size because you have to solve the problem. But this is not the problem. This has to be like an opportunity for producing something that is different or that adds something. I don't know what. Do you understand me? So
Yes,
4
I
meters,
definitely
4
agree.
meters is nothing. It's very small. It's very small. And this is a very radical statement. And then you have to be conscious about these radical decision that you make in the first steps of the project. So I think I would like, I buy it, but everything has to be radical, because this is a very strange house.
The square proportion is just it's unusual, right, for a space, right? Often we have, right, rectilinear spaces. Actually, the Gifu apartment building, I think those are rectilinear spaces, right, not squares, right? So, and the square is difficult to inhabit and furnish, as you know, like as we can see in a couple of instances here, where you're not exploring the opportunity, right, that or the potentials that a square might offer. I don't know what that is, but it's like the floor plans don't present themselves as logical conclusions from that square, you know, enclosure necessarily, right? You're reliant on a spiral stair, right? And you prop things into the corners, right? You still need an entrance, which then becomes one corner, right? So it's difficult to work with it, you know. It could be a concept, right, for subdividing the overall block, but then when it comes to the units, right, there could be, right, there could be divergence from that diagram, right, in favor of, you know, either subdividing or combining, right? So you don't become a slave to the 4 by 4 by 4 meter, right? It's all the same proportions in all 3 dimensions module. right? But I think if you go back to that plan diagram that we were looking at first, again, I think it was a very clear presentation.
Yeah,
The drawings
yeah.
are wonderful, you know.
True.
So I want to congratulate you on that. To me, there is something that's a little bit of a dichotomy here, which is, right, you have two different precedents, right, that you were referencing. One is the Gifu, which this is very, you know, fairly close to, right, in terms of kind of the unit aggregation, right, or the module aggregation into units, different type of units, and the kind of non-hierarchical distribution of units, right, throughout plan, and especially through the section, right? They're kind of, right, there is not really, right, a hierarchy, right, or a sequence, right? They're kind of, right, they're folded into the massing or into the volume. When we look at that's in section, right? When we look at the plan, right, there is a hierarchy, right? It's this concentric offset, which works for the Fujimoto private residence, right? Because this is all about layering, right? From the more public to the more private spaces, right? And from porous to non-porous, right? I don't think it works here necessarily, because like in a way you're setting up, you know, like a class society, right? You know, like there's this inner circle that's extremely private, and arguably in reality, those are the ones that are using that private, you know, open space in its center, right? And then there's the outer part of the society that, you know, faces the street, and there's a hierarchy, right, that's legible here, right? And it's offset. So I think there's a little bit of a conflict, right, in the way you think about your project, right, between a non-hierarchical and a hierarchical approach, right? Which ones, you know, the question would be, which ones are the more valuable units, right? Are probably the ones on the inside, right, that are facing the more quiet private courtyard, right, than the ones on the outside, right? So, right, but then again, in terms of unit distribution, you're treating everything equal. So it seems, at least. So I would try to resolve that a little bit better. I do appreciate thinking about this kind of universally, and thinking about, you know, a strategy that is applicable to a variety of different sites. But at the same time, you know, when it comes to the site constraints, I think, as was already said, you know, the relationships, you know, that arise, and the conflicts and the challenges that arise from the existing condition have to be looked at a little bit more carefully, and not just, you know, treated as omissions, right, in the pattern.
Yeah, it's like cutting.
Yeah.
Scissors.
Yeah.
Because, yeah. So
there's also, you know, like there's a scale difference, right, which is pretty drastic. That was present in the other two proposals as well. You know, like all of a sudden we're confronted with this 5-6 story development right next to, you know, a much smaller scale building. And, you know, the question is, what is that relationship that's established there?
Mm-hmm. Could we see the ground floor?
Yes.
So if you want, excuse me. So if you want to go to the inner patio, you have to go, no, because this is a private property. No, this is a private property. So so you can go here. This is a way of going to, and this is a way to go into.
Yes.
So it's like a secret garden.
Sort of.
Yeah, I like it. So so I think we can understand that it's a secret garden, but public. So how to deal with these two worlds that seems to be different? So or the opposite. So it's the idea of the secret places. I think is good. I think I like it very much. Something that is surprising, that you cannot expect because you don't know what's happened there. This is something I have an experience of a city, that a very strange city, that is Lima in Peru. Lima is a great city, but in the center of the city you can find many blocks that has marvelous gardens inside, And then you can go from one garden to the other because all these gardens are public. So, and all these gardens are really surprising, fresh. You have the feeling of being in, I don't know, in the heaven, because Lima is extremely dry. So the idea of the heaven, the idea of the paradise could be here, no? But I think you have to take in account that someone has to discover this. So what's happening here? I'm walking here, and then I go here, and then I would like to cross, and then so I think it's a good idea, but it's something that you in some way you found, no? You find it. Not it wasn't in the project. It wasn't in the project like a secret or of a paradise or something like that. So for that, what's happening here? How to activate this place, this secret place? I think is extremely important. So, and I think also in this ground level, it's not so clear that you are working with a model, and this is good because the model is, I think, it's very useful usually because you can measure, you can divide it, you can split things. So it's just a very good way for solving this kind of problems. But in some point, you have to break the rules, your own rules, and then you have to play with more freedom. And this is something that you can, I think it's something that is possible to find here in this plan. So here, for me, it's impossible to understand that this is something made by models, and I like it more because it's not so rigid. If we see the upper level, the next level,
Yes.
so it's so small. You can, could you make bigger?
I can go to the concept board if that would be helpful.
Don't worry. So,
oh, okay. Oh, sorry, my computer is extremely
don't worry. So,
laggy.
yeah, model could be a friend, but could be also an enemy. And in some point, you have to kill the model.
When you say, what do you mean when you say model?
Model, this the square.
Oh, okay. Oh,
this,
the module. Yeah.
Yeah, module.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Excuse me.
No.
Excuse me.
Please,
So
my English and pronunciation is
no, it's my English.
much.
I think this rigidity could be extremely useful, but in some point you have to kill it. You have to break the rules, and then you have to play with more freedom. Because if not, it's something that constrains the project, and it's losing opportunities. So
I agree on that. I think we said that already. Like I think it's useful to use it as a base or a starting point, unless there's something very specific that you have identified as an opportunity that arises from the square, right? Those square or even proportions, right? And if it becomes an obstacle, like you're in charge, right? You have the freedom, right, to disrupt it, right, or modify it, right, or reinterpret it, right, for your purposes.
Yeah. So why you choose this Sejima project as a reference? What is what is your feeling with this project? Why you are interested in this project?
At first, I was just in general more interested in units that are like kind of puzzle pieced together. And then I was like led to that project, which then led to the thinness of the form. But overall, I like the project. I think it is way more successful than this one. But I think it does like really nice things with like with like the porosity in the facades and like the ventilation that's allowed through the project, which is something I tried to do here, but I think I definitely agree with what you both said about the modules. I think it definitely could have used a couple more weeks in the design phase. So yeah.
Yeah, but in the Sejima project, I think you could, it's possible to find some layers, no, different layers,
Mhm.
and then so it's not so clear what is the limit of this small strip. So you have the feeling that you are not in a very small strip. You have something that is not so clear. I think we can see the photograph you saw us. So not only during the day, also during the night. So yeah, so it's the ambiguity. Do you know? Do you don't know what is exactly the wall? Do you don't know what is where is the enclosure? So this kind of things, I think, is close related to the radicality of the thickness of this wall, of this block. And this is something that probably you don't take in account. Imagine that you, for instance, to being more radical could be, I don't know, for instance, you have a house that is like that, a block that is like that, and then you have in the north a wall that is with, I don't know, bathrooms and small things, and then you have a small gallery, and then you have a different things here. This is like an, I don't know, a connections or something like that, and then you have some walls that could divide it and could be moved. So this is what I understand, that is being more radical when you are selecting a very radical size, for instance. This is what, and this is something that you can read here. For instance, you can see here what's happening here. There are another thing here, another thing here, another thing here, another thing here. So you can find different spaces, different layers or layers that makes this project, I think, stronger.
Mhm.
So sometimes you have to go deeper in the examples, and you have to go deeper in the reference. You have to understand very, very well, because at the end of the project, you will be an expert in this kind of projects. You will be who knows more about this kind of projects, about these blocks that are extremely small in thickness. And then what is the advantage? Because what you can add for the life, for the good life, when you are selecting this small size, in your case for only 4 meters.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, it's a good, I think it's very good. The facade are very clear, very strong, very well drawn.
Thank you. Right. But you do see in the slide the difference between the diagram and the plan, right? The plan
Right.
is not a series of square cubes, right? The diagram explains the logic of unit placement, right? And again, the non-hierarchical distribution, right, for the social housing project, right, which in its aspiration, right, wants to have as minimum of a footprint as possible, right? And it probably be as egalitarian as possible, right? All the stairs are the same, right? And it's, you know, so there's right, there is, again, you know, a lack of, you know, differentiating, right? So the suggestion, Jeanette's suggestion to to really, you know, take this as a starting point, right? And then really think through it and why decisions were made. And then, you know, compare that to the decisions that you have to make, right? For your situation, for your program. And then, you know, marry that or combine that with your ideas, right? Your opportunities will lead to, loosely based on this, but different outcome ultimately, right? Your own outcome. Right, adapted to your context, your program, and your modified ideas for the proposal.
I never had been in New Orleans, but I think the sun is very strong.
This
is true. So how to produce shadow probably is what do you want to produce. So, and then layers, protections, I don't know how to, textile, all these things, like your protection of your body. This is something that you have to explore.
Mm-hmm. I think there was a lot of glass shown in some of these elevations or the final model, right? So that's something that, you know, can be, you know, like a basic idea, right? You want this to be very light and open, right? And translucent, right? In a way. But then, you know, you have to modify that depending on the location and the orientation of some of these elevations, right? Mm-hmm. For example.
We're at time, guys.
Good.
Okay.
It's good. It's good. I think it's a good, Chelsea is a good project. I like it.
Thank you. I appreciate your feedback. There's definitely a lot of room for growth with this project, I think. But
it's a great place to be. And, you know, you use this information and the discoveries and apply that, you know, build up on that for the next proposal, right? Maybe there's some things that you discovered that you continue to be interested in, right? That you now keep on working with, right? And refine them and find your own ideas in them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you so much.
I have to leave. Thank you so much for the comments. And we are not supposed to talk. Oh, sorry. We are not supposed to talk, but I think what the comments that you have made about the layers and the complexity of the project, I don't know if you have seen also Chelsea's horizontal home. So I think it's a great comment what you have told you to be able to merge the learning from and these comments into the project. So I have to move to the other room, but thank you, Ginés. Thank you, Cordula. It's great to see you. Okay.
Hi, I can share my screen now.
Okay.
Are y'all able to see this? Is it working?
Yes.
Okay, good. Hi, I'm Lauren Lake. I'm a second-year undergrad in Lockhart section. Diversifying living is my community. This collective housing was created on the principles of diversifying living in New Orleans and in this community. The horizontal, vertical, and sectional home, as well as the porch analysis, served me as a starting point to develop the different typologies in the aggregation project. In the horizontal house, I worked with careful attention to everyday activities and visual connections. In the vertical house, I worked with expanding on the function of stairs and going beyond the regular stair functionality. And in the sectional house, I worked on emphasizing relations between different floors. In the porch analysis, it has helped me understand how important porches are to New Orleans culture and trying to bring that into my aggregation project. The site of this community is situated on a residential block with 3 commercial facilities on Dryad Street. The commercial features are located on this street, intending to consolidate a commercial area also defined by the local regulations. As you can see in the axon, 3 of the buildings right here are connected with the sky bridge, which makes it easy roof access for those 3 buildings, an open space for the community to come and gather that is more intimate than the collective spaces on the ground level. The open spaces are also created on these ground levels, which I will go into detail later. However, the other 2 buildings have green roofs that are stair accessible, but the main collective space are on these 3 buildings. You can see in these diagrams with the existing site, then the proposed site, as well as the existing vegetation and the proposed vegetation. I hatched in where the existing, where the proposed site would be to see why some trees were placed and why other trees were placed for emphasis. This is the ground floor plan, and you can see how this project focuses on diversifying community living. The primary reason for the abundance of collective spaces and outdoor features is because this project focuses on all types of families and people living together, regardless of income status, stage of life, and size of family. This is the second floor level. And you can see that each level has the same vertical cores that come up with 2 voids letting for trees and natural light to be let into these cores, as well as porches, an elevator and stairs. In this 3rd floor level, you can see a collective kitchen that creates voids and allows for porosity of light into this structure. This is the 4th floor, and then the roof access, so you can also see 2 different duplex typologies coming out and creates these solid and void structure that pushes and pulls from the regular floor plan. In section A, you can see how this duplex typology is shaped right here, as well as these open spaces underneath 4 of the buildings. You can see how they connect. This one has a seating that comes down, as well as this one is an outdoor covered space that is grassy. In this, you can see the small pool that is on the side right here, as well as how the sky bridge connects these 2 buildings together and how light is able to spill into the ground floor levels. These are different perspectives, and here's a sequence of experiences starting from the street level. This is Dryad Street looking into the project. And you can see this is one of the roofs that is a green roof and is looking into the middle. This is on the sidewalk, and you can see how the light spills through from the roof level, as well as this is a small pool where residents can come cool off during the hot New Orleans summers. You can also see the connection with the background of the residential blocks. In this diagram, you can see how the same vertical cores are placed in each of the buildings, as well as units spread out throughout each building, so there's no hierarchy to each different resident living wherever they are. So these are the amenities. There's a gym and a pool. There's 2 gyms that are actually commercial facilities where people who are not residents can enter. However, the pool is just for residents only. These are on Dryad Street, like I said at the beginning, and since they are grouped in with the commercial facilities while the rest are open to the residents. This is a collective workspace in the next building right here, as well as a daycare for the residents' children and a playground located closely by for the children to play. And there's a yoga studio also open for the residents. There are 66 total units, the first being a small unit, which is 1 bedroom and 1 bathroom. And below you can see how each relate to the vertical core. Next is the medium unit, which is 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. And they're usually mirrored to make the exact same size as the large unit, which is 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. The next is the medium duplex, and this spans 2 levels with a double height space at the end for living and dining. But it's just 1 bedroom and 2 bathroom. And the large duplex, which is 4 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms. And instead it is the same shape as the regular large unit. However, it has stairs to go up while also having another double height space and large terrace that is very important to New Orleans culture. I'm gonna show, I wasn't able to get, are y'all able to see my moving axon?
No.
No, okay, let me share that part. Are you able to see it now?
Yes.
Okay, so this shows how each are placed on the ground level, and you can see how my color-coded blocks then play into this moving axon. And that's all. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
1 minute.
Okay. Can you go maybe to the floor plan?
Yes.
Or the site plan?
Would it be easier for me to go to concept board, or is this fine?
No, this is fine.
Okay. Is this good?
This is good, yeah. So the cores are pretty massive, right? They're again, a square configuration and plan. What else is taking place in these cores?
So on the cores, you can see in these corners, each have seating so people can come and live, like the units that are on together on each floor are able to sit, as well as on this floor, you can see these are porches and terraces. So they have voids instead of solids for this, as well as different types of seating. And then if you can see right here and right here on each one have light spilling in. So there's 2 trees and light's able to come into different units as well as the core. So it's not a dark place to sit.
There's a tree. How does that work in section? Is there a tree per floor?
There's 1 tree at the bottom. Sorry, 1 second.
At the bottom, and then there's a light well.
It's right, if you can see here, there's a light well that goes down, but this is cut before it.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, this is not easy to solve these corners. So could we see the plan?
Plan,
Yes.
please.
Yeah, here. So you have a problem here. You have a problem here. Here you have a problem. So what do you have to do? Probably this is like that, and then you have possibility of introducing like here. So I understand that you make these blocks that probably is the it's because so corners are very difficult to solve. So always happen.
You're lagging a little bit. I don't know if it's for anyone else.
Excuse me?
Oh, are you able? I think you lagged a little. I couldn't hear what you just said. Would you mind repeating?
Okay.
Yeah, we
It's
couldn't
better now.
I think
hear
the
you.
decision.
It's better now.
Hello?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah, you're good now.
Yeah. So I think the decision of making this square at the end of the project transform this decision in a problem, because again you need to explore more freedom. Perhaps this is an outside space, or you can make a hole, or what you want. So you establish a thing in the early phases of the project, and then you go walking with this decision till the end without looking at this decision in a critic way. And I think for instance, in the other hand, I think this house is fantastic. Yes, that is, you have this division, you have these terraces that divide the dining room from the living. So you have this circulation here. So you have a lot of decisions that are very good, but you have other decisions that you have to take. You have to look at in a critical way in the process, because at the end of the project, this is something that happens for me. So why I take this decision, I make this decision. I don't like it. And then you have to go, you have to go in the other direction. So trying to understand why you make this decision, and perhaps the reasons that you for making these decisions in the first part, in the first phases of the project disappear, and then you have no the reasons now, so you can use in another way. So I like also, I think it's very important, and I think is this idea of the blocks, no, that maintains the scale of the neighborhoods, of the houses. So I think this is a good idea, no? So trying to explore how to make collective houses and blocks without losing the scale of the neighborhoods, without being aggressive with what's happening in the other side of the streets. And I think it's very successful. So the way of understanding the scale, the size, the landscape, you show us some photographs that I think is very valuable, because you So it's easy for me that I have never been there to understand how is the scale of this place, how is the atmosphere. And in that case, I think this project, I think is successful. So congrats.
Thank you.
I like also the way in which you solve most of the houses, most of the types. The worst is you have to look at every day in a critical way what you are doing and not establishing, or in some point not establishing what the decisions you make, because sometimes have the reasons that you had in the past, and these squares that you have here and here are a little bit brutal, a little bit against this idea of the block that has the scale of the houses, but at the same time it's a block.
I definitely agree. I think it could definitely have gone a little bit deeper and tried to do more iterations for that.
And
So
last thing, so this house, looking at the south, in New Orleans, without protections, you died. Without cross ventilation, you died. Or you have to spend a lot of money in fridge. So this is something that is impossible there.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you know, there's some compelling moments. You know, these blocks almost spell like letters of the alphabet in plan, which is interesting. You know, I think these cores need reconsideration, right? They're all the same. They relentlessly incorporate, right, these, you know, these four corners, you know, just in repetitive fashion, independent from, you know, how many units are really related here, right? Do these functions really serve the tenants well? You know, like who's really going to sit there, right? If you're on your way to the unit, right? So is all this space that is offered, right, that really kind of stands in, right, in direct comparison almost with the unit scale and sizes, certainly in terms of their depth, right? Is that all well used and necessary, and placed in the right location? So, right, versus, you know, you could play around with the scale, right, or the proportioning, and certainly the programming of these cores, you know, like those could actually be areas where, you know, variation is offered, right? Maybe they take on different functions, right, or you know, different, you know, configurations, right, per block, right, and they break out of the rectilinear grid and become something else. I'm not sure what that would be, but it just seems that as kind of like as a joint, they're you know, they offer more opportunity for thinking through their function, their circulation, right, which is currently just, you know, right in the center, right? The units meet them, right? Everything is very symmetrical, right? The units meet them right at the center point, which leads to right here, right? You know, this is right. This is, you know, like right, an interesting, right, a pretty big circulation space, which for example, this unit, I would argue, suffers from, right, these two units, because they become proportionally very narrow, right, and linear, right? So the question is that the right solution here? That's probably the most evident case. So you know, I think to me, I would you know, think about, you know, opportunities for these cores, right? They could also, right, they could be smaller, right, or the units could be, right, they could be offset, you know, of that the symmetry and of the center line, and, you know, see what is generated from that in terms of circulation, right, and in terms of opportunity of, you know, bringing light in, right, and designing them, right. These kind of parceled off corner conditions, I don't think are helpful. And again, it's the issue of the square in plan, right? That is not easy to resolve, right? You end up with a 9-square grid for these cores in a way, right? Which forces you to come up with programming for those 4 corners. So versus saying maybe these joins or cores, can become something different, maybe something that is detached, right? Or something, right, that is looser, right, in their configuration.
Or perhaps it's an outside space.
Or an outside space, so it's porous.
I think New Orleans has a weather that this is something that could be possible. So you have a staircase here, and then you are so probably something that belongs to the tradition of this kind of blocks in New Orleans or in some. I know this. I have seen this spaces that share by different people which are outside in many places in the US. So it's a place for nothing. Yes, it's outside. It's for, I don't know, for the bicycles, for the, I don't know what. So for the kids, it's like a small playground that is in front of the house. Imagine that children are playing in this small place.
Can you go to your rendered views?
Yes. This is my first. Do you want me to go through all 3 of them?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, this is the first one, the second one, and the third.
Mm-hmm. So I know these are just, everybody's just learning to use programs and be in command of representation, but at the same time, you have the responsibility to start to become conscious of what it is that you're producing, right? And so the question is, right, it looks like this is clad in some kind of wood paneling, or maybe, is that the intent?
Yes, it was wood paneling.
Okay, so in regards to the facade, which is extremely solid, right, and not opaque, right, then interspersed with these punched out windows. The question is, what is the intent here, right? I mean, you can be conscious about this decision making and say, this is exactly, this is what I want as an outcome, which is kind of, it's internalizing the program, right? And then the question is, what is it, right? What is the effect, within the floor plan, right, that takes advantage of that internalizing, right? Mm-hmm. Arguably, the proposal at this stage doesn't have a very, yet successful relationship to its ground and exterior condition, right? Mm-hmm. Except that one guy, right, standing, looking out, that might be a core condition. Or I'm not sure what a balcony, right? But so the attitude is right now not a friendly one towards the shared public space, right? So you should ask yourself, what is the nature of the community that I'm creating here, right? That I'm enabling, right? Through the choice of material, through the way openings are designed, right? Through kind of decisions about transparency, translucency, and opacity. Right, and opportunities for the residents to, at various sectional levels, to engage with, other parts of the building visually, right, and also with the ground areas. So that's important, right? As designers, we have that responsibility to really think this through. So. So those are the questions that you should be asking yourself. Well, what have I created, right? And is this the outcome that I intend to be, right? Is that the reading and the kind of community that I'm intending to create? And if not, what do I need to modify?
Completely. Thank you for your feedback. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's true. I agree. Yes. Probably if you don't know how the facade are, you can produce renders that could be more abstract. And then, so I think this is something that, so it's not necessary to tell the whole story in all the drawings. You have to select what do you want to tell in each drawings. And then because you need more time for defining everything. So trying to draw something that you don't know, I think is better to erase. Yes, erase, 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 erase. If you use the erase more than draw, or I think the project is better. But it's not easy because you have to fill in, or all the students have the feeling that they have to tell a lot of things. And this is not true. So I think it's sometimes the projects are too cooked, no? So, and I prefer something that is more like a promise. So if perhaps it's not finished, nothing happens. So I prefer a promise than something that is too done, too cooked. And this is something that happens here in this drawing. It's not easy to know how the construction, the material express the ideas of these blocks. In that case, you have to draw something just talking about volumes in white without any information about windows or columns. This is not interesting. So you have to ask yourself what I want to talk, what I want to express with using this drawing, because this is a way of asking yourself questions about the project. So promises is better than something that is too cooked, because it's dry, it's not good. Anyway, I think, excuse me, no, yes.
Well, simultaneously tagging onto that, Ines, is if like an image like this, creates more questions than answers, then again, it's much better to be more speculative, right? And as he was suggesting, to right, to leave the answers a little bit more open, right? Because here, right, there are so many questions that we can now ask, that about things that are not resolved yet, right? So, right, from materiality to openings to vegetation to what's, is that a pool or a pond? Right, things like that, so, right, that suggestion is right on, I think, like it's better, there's so many different, techniques that you can deploy in terms of representation, that create a vision, right, rather than, kind of an end result, as Ines already said.
Yeah, agree. It's not easy.
No, I'm not saying that it's easy.
Sometimes it looks very easy, but it's not easy.
Right.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your feedback.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. It's good. Yeah.
Hi. Thank you very much, Ines and Cordula, for your valuable feedback. Another instructor will come now to see the other students.
Okay.
Oh,
thank you.
Okay.
Lexi.
Should I go ahead now or wait for Carrie to come in?
I think you can go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. My name's Lexi. I'm in Carrie's section. I'm a second-year undergrad. My project, or the project, is titled the Urban Nature Oasis, after the environment that it creates within the urban block. So first we can take a look at the earlier projects of the semester and their influence on the aggregation. So first we have the horizontal home, which is arranged in the form of a pinwheel, which is the same way that the aggregation is placed upon the urban block, with each structure facing each of the four streets surrounding the block. And next we have the vertical house, which has an open air stair core, which is pulled into the aggregation, which will be shown in a couple slides. And also the vertical house is split down the center by units, which is brought into the aggregation as well. And similar to the vertical house, the sectional home possesses that same central split that's brought into the aggregation. This diagram shows the vertical core of the aggregation and how it allows for indoor greenery and it creates air circulation within the space. Moving on to site evaluations, the buildings that remain upon the site are Charlie's Steakhouse, French Truck Coffee, and a residential home. And the area surrounding the urban block is densely packed with traditional New Orleans single-family homes, as well as schools, restaurants, parks, and other community spaces. The remaining context of the space was a main part of the beginning of the origin of the project. From there, a bunch of different strategical moves took place to create the urban nature block. So surrounding the remaining context, there is an enclosed perimeter that creates a large central open space, which now houses the urban nature block. From there, porosity was introduced that allowed for access on each side of the urban block. It creates multiple access points into the project. And these access points led to a pedestrian street that cuts through the project through every side. And then this development of access and pedestrian path led to the division of program. So this diagram summarizes the previous by pointing out that the design was first influenced by community life and then by the given space. Following is the ground floor strategy. The main housing structures are lifted above the ground and only inhabit the perimeter of the site. So there's plenty of room for a variety of programs to take over in the center of the block. And the enclosed structures that remain on the ground floor surround the stair cores, but they also contain different program for both residents of the housing complex and the public. So they aren't just closed off. And those include retail spaces, a grocery store, a bar, among others. So one is led into the project by slipping through these main forms on the ground. And they enter into this urban block that is zoned out by program. So there are vegetable gardens, a pond, a play space, and different lounge spaces, such as a quad and picnic areas. And then proceeding to the second and third stories of the project, there's a uniform typology that's maintained in both the second and third story plans. But first, there are three main units, and they are the small one, which is 2 beds, 1 bath, the medium unit, that's 4 beds, 1 bath, and the large unit that is 5 beds, 2 baths. So for the most part, these units all stay the same, with the occasional punch out of a terrace on the outer facade on the elevation facing the street. And this break in rigidity creates a little bit more of an interest on the street elevation. So as you can see, the project's facade creates a juxtaposition of formalities. The street elevation has that uniform window structure. And those uniform windows create a greater focus when there is the punch-in of the terrace. Whereas on the inside of the block, the elevation consists of a variety of different window shapes, sizes, and forms. And these windows are also on the sides of the project, and they evoke curiosity and provide a buffer from the formal to the informal center of the project. As for the materiality and the strategy of the ground floor, the glass creates a bridge between the outside of the block and the inside of the central block. It separates the outer community and the green space within. The experience of the project is very different in every section cut or perspective one could take because the distribution of the program is so wide across the block. So the first section here is cut just through one of the structures and it's facing the steakhouse. So in front of that, on the bottom left, you can see an elevation, one of the community gardens that is there. And then also on the ground level, you can see the opacity of that stair core enclosure very well. And then this long section is taken from Jenna to Cadiz, and this starts to show a bit of the program that's being introduced, such as the hammock being the lounge space, the community picnic tables, the implementation of the greenhouse that goes along with the community gardens, etc. This perspective is taken on Jenna Street, and it allows a glimpse to possible materiality of the project, but also shows the cut through to the open green space. And it shows the formal geometry of the facade really well. And then you see those terrace cutouts with the greenery very well as well. So thank you for listening. I look forward to hearing your feedback.
Can you go back to the plan, Lexi? There's
the ground.
Bring us to concept board if that's helpful too.
Yeah, it's okay. I find it.
Okay.
This is good to look at.
Do you want the ground floor?
Yeah. There is the first observation would be that your project seems much less dense than the others we've seen today. Is there a reason for that? There's you know, less units, it seems, and certainly less building mass on the site.
Yeah, so I wanted to stay a lot. I still do have 65 units, or 64, sorry, within the project. But when we were first introduced to the site, I just thought it was kind of odd to be putting, especially something very tall or heavy upon the site, since it is just like a community in Uptown New Orleans. So I was kind of trying to think of some strategies for the project that would make it a little bit more implemented into community. So I was thinking that the like the open central block would be a great way to bridge the existing community with the new community that's going to move into the housing complex, because sometimes people throw housing complexes into the middle of a residential community and they're two very separate things. So my strategy with this, yeah, was making the central block open not only to residents, but to the community as well.
So you have an argument.
Yes.
Yeah, the question is then, you know, like if that's the right way to look at it, right? And if this is where, you know, this idea that you have successfully manifests itself, you know, arguably, right? You know, something that, you know, like is a consideration is the scalar difference, right? Between, you know, a multi-story, you know, housing block, right? An existing residential fabric. But like one could, you know, like if one is interested in kind of maintaining, you know, like the kind of the spatial patterns of the context, right? One could then look at those patterns, right? And see if anything can be, right, extracted, right? That is useful to informing the block. So it kind of, it more seamlessly, right, adapts itself, or it successfully reinterprets, right, the existing condition. So what we have, right, typically, right, we have, you know, like in this area, right, we have a series of, you know, shotguns, double shotguns, right, that, right, that, you know, make the blocks, right, that arguably do leave, you know, a center space often available and often, you know, underutilized. Sometimes there's actually a kind of like a keystone property that's available in the center. Actually, my house takes advantage of being merged with one of those center properties, which is really nice because it gives us additional space, right? But so there is the recognition that there is, you know, some leftover space, right, that could be utilized and shared, right? And through the required setbacks, right, provide, you know, access, right? Maybe not everywhere, right? But maybe, you know, in different, right, in different areas, right, to that center space, right, either to serve the surrounding community, right, or to serve the residents. I think that's a decision that has to be made. So what the difference though is that, you know, what you have, right, is can you go to the upper level plan? Right, so the orientation of your building blocks is not doing that though, right? It's not analyzing the existing condition, right, and then reinterpreting that. You rotate it, right? Your buildings exist perpendicular, almost like a kind of like a threshold, right, or a barrier between the exterior of the block and then the interior, leaving the interior, you know, kind of a fairly undefined open space, right? Even where the streets, you know, what you call the pedestrian streets, where they converge, right? You would think there is something, right, that somehow, right, leads to some kind of, you know, moment, right, where something happens, right, or something is, you know, placed to connect the context, right, to the inside of the block and bring it together. It seems like there's an opportunity there to take advantage of that. But again, if the idea is that the proposal is somewhat of an adaptation or translation of those existing spatial patterns, then I think the requirement would be to look a little bit more carefully at what exists around, how it's organized, and what the opportunities are that arise from adapting that to the block and to the program.
Yeah, I agree. This is something that is in the middle of nowhere in some way. So, yeah. Well, talking about other things, could we go to the type, to the houses? Yeah, I think this idea of something in some way very old, no? Just make with walls, no? Like a 19th century house, yeah, without concrete. Looks could be very interesting, but in some places it's not clear. So so this could be a houses made of homogeneous rooms, in which all the rooms could be exactly with the same size, because you know this kind of houses that has rooms, all of them equal. That makes in some way the houses very flexible, because you can have one bedroom or two living rooms, or two living rooms and another bedroom, or one bathroom, or perhaps the bathroom has the same size that the bedroom and the living. So this idea of the net that is quite similar, I think is interesting. So probably you was talking, or you was working with this kind of houses, but at the end, because you want to draw something more conventional, I think you was losing some radicality in this way of just houses made by walls that has equal rooms for, I don't know. This is one thing. And the other thing is related to the core. I think the core is not, it's not very well done, and this is not very in the right position. Could we go to the ground floor? So probably the core has to be here, and here, and here, and here, And here, I don't know, something like that. And then you have to go into the gallery or go into the, I don't know, how's the space, how the name of this space? Like, I don't know, the entrance, and then you have this public space, and then you can go into the house. So this position in the middle, for instance, this is impossible. So how to draw something that is like that, that has the core here, and the next is here, and the core is here, more or less. And then you have to use this place for going to the staircases or for going to this retail or bar or mail or what you want. So I think this solution, I think, is not well done because the core is not in the right position. So, and this is again as a result of what you say, Cordula, about this idea that I think is not very, very clear. So if you are making a block that is here and that you are making a block here, so excuse me, I'm going to draw again. Yes, you have a block here, and then you have another block here or whatever, and then you have something that is completely free, like a different thing. So this confusion or this being in the middle space of two things, of block, or trying to make something that has the scale and have the relation with the sizes of the houses that you have in the surroundings, that is not really clear. So this idea of build an enclosure, I think is strong because you have something really surprising, very special, extremely marvelous in the center of the block.
Do you understand why the core placement is not ideal within those within the volumes? It renders the rest of the space not very usable, right? Because you're losing, you're giving so much circulation space, you know, surrounding the core, that the leftover space that is, you know, for the program, right, is just diminished in size. So it's more conducive. You could also access the core then directly from the outside, right? Instead of having to go in the bookstore and then into the core, right? Or into the coffee shop and into the elevator, right? If that makes sense. So
could we go to the elevation? Yeah, so this is really important. It's very tall, these spaces. So, and then you have this with a different thing. This more massive, I think is good. So, but what's happened and the design of this ground level is very, very important because this is also because this is establishing a relation with the existing. So these blocks that are floating over the very glassy spaces in which you can see what's happening inside because you have a bookstore or a coffee or a coffee shop or something like that is quite important. So and how is the relation between these spaces that you have in the ground level and the outside space, inside or outside the block? So because perhaps you can be having a coffee outside in the interior garden because you are close to the coffee shop or something like that. So these glassy squares or rectangles that you draw probably is one of the most important things that you propose in the block. And this is, I think, apparently you don't you lose an opportunity of about in the surroundings of these spaces.
You said something about creating curiosity through window placement. Can you use the elevation to explain that?
So the window placement isn't so much about porosity as the ground.
No, I think
floor.
you said, did you say curiosity?
Yes, I think so. So the idea behind that is that as seen in this perspective, the street facade is very uniform, with pretty much the same size windows, and the only change is in those terrace spaces. So it's just a very straightforward strategy. And then on the sides, which you can see in the axon here, so on the sides, they have the same strategy as with inside the project. So I think the words I used were evoke curiosity.
Who's being curious?
Well, so as one's like walking past the project, they see this uniform strategy of windows, and then they turn the corner and see something a little more fun and playful, and maybe that draws them into the space, which is the ground floor is a bit more fun and playful, I would say, with the play spaces and the gardens and the gatherings spaces.
Right. I mean, I think that, if nothing else, if you think about it, that probably draws more attention to the treatment of the ground floor itself, which right now is uniform, and it's kind of which is fine as a starting point, but like a more monotonous curtain wall system that's the same on all sides. But if you walk along somewhere, you're typically not going to look up the facade, right, to the upper levels, right? I mean, you can, but what you mostly register is what's at eye level, right? So then the question is, right, what's the best strategy to create this? If you want to draw people to the interior of the block, right, what's the best strategy to create that interest, right? Or as you describe it, that curiosity, right? What draws people right into the block, right? And it has to do with kind of, what they can see, right, through the openings, right, at the ground level on the inside of the block. So maybe creating attraction points inside, right, if that's the goal here, right? And then also, providing something again at eye level, along the sidewalk, right, or along the passages that are the openings, right? Maybe orchestrate the openings or the alleyways into the block with more kind of more tension or more specificity, right? So you get something evokes that interest that makes you want to move into the block and explore it, right? We talked in a previous design about, what do I see, right? And what draws me in, right? And I think that's what you need to think about rather than, 2 or 3 stories up, because that's not typically something that one would engage with as a pedestrian walking along, right? Right, I mean, you could think about a different color or material scheme for the inside facades of the buildings, right? Which you arguably would somewhat register as you peek to the inside of the block.
Yeah, I agree. And probably you have to select the number of entries.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps there are too much. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I think so. You have to select from which places. For instance, it's not the same to go into the garden from the south or from the north. If you go into the south, from the south, you will see something brilliant inside. So how the light impact the vegetation, the facades in the afternoon, in the evening, in the morning, it's important. It's important. So you have to control a little bit more the spaces in which you are thinking, for provoking, for instance, at Cordula says, to invite to go into from the side, from the south, from the north, from the east, So everything is too much homogeneous. There are no hierarchy. So and for that, nothing interesting happens, or nothing interesting attract to you to go into. And for that, your main idea, that is the enclosure, is a little bit weak.
We often register the French Quarter courtyards, and if you think about those as an example for, very narrow alleyways, right, often gated, but that allow, for a glimpse, right, to the inner portion of a block, which is pretty densely closed off typically in that area. Right. But, every once in a while you can see like a pool or, like a courtyard, right, that becomes visible from the street. It's typically where tourists gather to take a look and figure out what's going on. Right. So like if you imagine, here the similar scenario in terms of, proportioning and limiting, and as Ines was saying, controlling these visual and physical entrance and access points. I think then you're able to create that tension between the exterior perimeter, right, and the kind of more special interior of the block, right, as a discovery, or right. I think, Ines, you brought up Lima before, where I haven't been, but sounds fascinating.
Yeah, it's good. So, and last question. Do you know how is the size of a tree in New Orleans? A normal tree. Well, how tall it is?
3 floors or something.
Probably it's high, no? The trees are in New Orleans because it's very rainy. So this interior space that you design looks like in the savannah of Africa, in a very dry place. So imagine that these places has these trees like that. Probably taller than the buildings. No? Looks completely different.
What do you think, Lexi?
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say that what is remarkable is the amount of units you've been able to fit in a structure that is not very tall in a way. No, I think this drawing do not benefit really your project because the existing structures are flat. No, if you were to draw more the context, it would feel much more integrated in that sense. And I think there is, but the fact that you have a large number of units in a relatively low structure makes it easy, but the drawing is not following your aim in a way, I guess.
Lexi, you have to defend your project.
Yeah.
Okay, come on.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of the things that
no, you have
y'all
to say
said.
you are disagree. You are disagree.
Sometimes you don't have to, though.
No, you have to disagree.
I think it's interesting that you guys were talking about like how a lot of my strategy was on like the second and third stories to like evoke people to come into the project, which it's interesting. I mean, we are only second years, but it's interesting when we are drawing in axon and in plan and from above. That's a lot of where our train of thought is. So,
but that's not what we said. That's what you said.
But that's a point that I actually I wanted to bring up about your project, Lexi. I think this is a good reminder to us that architecture develops in a range of mediums, as much in plan as it is in perspective. And I think when you started to develop the project in perspective toward the end, it started to unlock new potentials. And so that's where I encourage you as you move forward, is to really fold the perspective in as a design agent. Because I actually think that your sensitivities to the spatial aspects of your project start to really become developed when you see it in perspective. And so perhaps some of the specificity that the jurors are requesting relative to the landscape strategy, the gardens, could be worked through and developed, I think, through perspective. I think that the landscape that you've developed, while the trees might be undersized, I think is a strong concept. I think it relates to the ways in which suburban homes get these broad lawns, right? And so you're sort of folding in that amenity into a much more urban condition. And I do think the project has a lot of contextual merit, including the gaps between your ground floor buildings that relates very well to the gaps between buildings in the surrounding neighborhood. So other, key, I think, design guides that could be picked up in the project, could be discussed in the project.
So it's perfect to have a timing that is amazing. 56, so we have 4 minutes if you want to, I don't know, restroom or coffee or something, and then we meet at noon. At the chat, there is also, again, the link to the general room, room 0. We are all going to meet there and have your feedback as jury members of the different sessions this morning.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Lexi, for
Thank
making
you.
it possible.
Yeah, thank you.
So we have to go to the other.
Thank you, everyone.
I will wait that you have your link and then leave the room. I think in the, okay, perfect.